I love the saying, what's the worst that could happen? Allowing, just trusting. And there's a great book called Things Fall Apart, and the other part of that is so that they can come back together again. And when we can trust enough and let go of the control to let it fall apart sometimes so that it can reorganize and come back together. I was watching the news and they were talking about the breakup of, I forgot the company just now, that filed bankruptcy. And I thought, as the owner of a company, oh gosh, it's so embarrassing. You got to admit to, if you're a publicly traded company, you admit to the world that things are bad, something was mismanaged, and you're filing bankruptcy. But you know what? Sometimes out of bankrupt companies come the most beautiful jewels when they're done with that. But we're so ingrained to believe that if things aren't happening in this 100% golden way that's right all of the time, then something is wrong. How would we ever learn anything? And we don't stop learning when we're children. The lessons continue. And lessons oftentimes mean things have to come apart so that we can see how to put it back together again. So allowing. And then the calm mind of it all. How do I get that in the midst of all of this? Let's say I happen to manage to get past this, God forbid. I happen to get all the way down here. What thwarts a calm mind? Thinking. And then, I was trying to write the word busyness, and I couldn't spell it. So I put B-U-S-Y-N-E-S-S. And because at first I was writing business, B-U-S-I, and I was like, business, busyness. There's something to that. The I and the ego moving, and then holding burdens is what allows us for that monkey mind to flutter and continue. And the opposite of that in the practice is the prayer and the meditation, and being a daily practitioner. It almost seems like it's painful for us to stop and sit. and in the classes that I lead and facilitate with meditation training, we almost would rather, let me watch TV, I want to write, I want to read, I need to go to the grocery store, I'm going to sweep. But the idea of sitting is one of the most uncomfortable things our society is challenged with. What is that? What is that? Just sitting in quiet, allowing. That's an interesting phenomenon that our brains and our culture have allowed our minds to be so revved up. You go on vacation, like, oh, I needed a couple of days just to even calm down to be on vacation. Before I knew it, I was back. And so when you look at these things together, peace is really the immanence, because it's already within of the divine. Just the immanence of it. It just needs a place to let itself out. Just a moment, a spot. An acknowledgement, a listening to, a trusting. And oftentimes we don't get our lessons until things are so dire. We're in the most extreme situations. We talked earlier about someone being in unbelievable denial and going through physical extremes and mental extremes. And then when we're so humble where there's nowhere else to turn, we have to just stop and fall down because there's nothing else to do. And so before it even gets to that point, we've had so many little things that just say, hey, wait a minute, just wait, hold on. Oh, no, that's not going to work. But just stopping and listening, because we will never, ever be led wrong by spirit. Never. It may not seem conventional, but God isn't logical. There's nothing about God that's logical. Nothing at all. And you guys will hear me tell you this because this is one of my sermons. There's two or three sermons that will last me for the rest of my life. Okay, you've heard this too over at our other classes. A little girl in Africa was abducted from her community. I think it may have been the Janjaweed little girl, probably 7 or 8 years old, pulled out into the jungle by 7 adult men who were going to rape her and kill her. This little child, innocent, is out here screaming and crying for her life. she'd been beaten, attacked, no one to help her. Out of the bush come 2 adult male lions. They attack the men. They kill a couple. And the ones they don't kill, obviously, are run off. And this little girl is sitting here bleeding and crying. Now, to a wild lion, blood, it just is food. These lions sat with her until someone from the village came to get her. When they came to get her, the lions moved back and allowed them to walk up and take her out. And they watched them until they got into the village, and then they left. And that story ran on Reuters and AP 2 years ago. And most people might just read that and go, oh, wow, that's amazing. That said to me, when I say to a mountain, move, and it'll move. God will use anything in God's power, which is everything, to do anything that needs to be done. Anything that needs to be done. There are no limitations. There are no boundaries. There is nothing that can stop the power of God from changing anything. Do you hear me? If God can bring 2 lions to life to do the work that needs to be done, to somebody who has nothing, who are we who have everything around us to not believe that that same power isn't working for us right here and right now? So in this surrender and in this practice and in this divinity, in this understanding, let us just allow the imminence to take place. So as we let our minds intellectualize this, and as we allow the mind to own some of this teaching, let's now go into meditation where spirit really does the work to bring about the solutions. So I'm going to do a little something different today. It's not what, I know Ina does it, but Don doesn't do it a lot. I want to do it just to start off with a bit of a guided meditation today, because I feel like we need it.
I just had a comment really quick about what you were talking about with things coming apart so they can be put back together. How do I even say that? I was watching television and I was watching The Universe, the show on the History Channel, and they were talking about black holes, and this is just the perfect example of what you're talking about. They said that they have figured out what happens when you go into a black hole. And when you go in, they call it the spaghetti effect. It stretches your particles and continues to stretch your particles and stretch them until one of 2 things happens. Either they explode or they separate. Now, of course, if they explode, well, you're done. But if they separate, there's this force that's further in the black hole that forces them back together and actually pushes them out of the black hole.
And you know what's interesting? As a science buff, the center of a black hole, as our scientists have called it and defined it, is called the singularity. And so when we think about this unified oneness, what a perfect understanding of the power of the allness when you think about it at a universal and galactic level. But the singularity, the oneness, the unified allness, the alpha, the omega, that is power at such a massive level that we don't even understand the edges of the universe, the beginning of time, the ending of time. And you know what? It doesn't really matter. But seeing those analogies and references and how the little and the lot are really connected is so true. And that's so right. It's so absolutely right. So that's beautiful as we go into our meditation. Let's hold that thought. Hit it.